Catherine McEwan, Cebu, Philippines. On March 12, 2024, Catherine McEwan, 29, stayed at a seaside resort in Cebu, Philippines, celebrating a friend's birthday. The resort featured a large inflatable jumping balloon floating over the pool. Guests were encouraged to leap and flip from the edges, creating a competitive environment. Catherine and several friends climbed onto the inflatable, laughing as they attempted flips and jumps. On her third jump, her foot slipped into an unsecured seam near the edge. The bounce propelled her body at an unnatural angle across the surface, and she collided with the rigid edge of the supporting platform. Her neck and shoulders absorbed the impact, and she tumbled into the shallow water with a heavy thud. Other guests screamed and rushed to assist while water splashed violently around her. Resort staff arrived seconds later, attempting to lift her from the pool while performing emergency first aid. Paramedics arrived but could not revive her. Investigators found multiple safety defects. The inflatable seams were torn. Supervision was minimal, and no warning signs were in place. The accident sequence, slipping, being propelled into the air, striking the platform, and hitting the water, highlighted how small miscalculations on a recreational device can become fatal. Authorities temporarily closed all inflatable attractions and issued nationwide safety inspections. A moment intended for fun became a deadly accident in seconds, shocking visitors and locals alike. Jorge Guillen, Playa del Carmen, Mexico. On January 15, 2024, Jorge Guillen, 38, arrived at a beachfront resort in Playa del Carmen, Mexico with his wife for a short holiday. After a long day of sightseeing, he decided to relax in the private hot tub on their terrace. His wife joined him, and the two began to enjoy the warmth of the bubbling water. Within moments, a sudden, violent surge of electricity coursed through the tub. Jorge convulsed violently, thrashing against the sides, striking his shoulder and back repeatedly. His wife grabbed at him, trying to pull him free, but the force of the current made it impossible. Sparks flickered from the underwater heating element as water splashed over the edge. Staff in the resort heard screams and rushed to assist, yanking Jorge out of the tub. Paramedics arrived within minutes and attempted resuscitation, but Jorge was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators discovered a short-circuited heating system worsened by years of poor maintenance and ignored warnings about minor electrical sparks. The accident sequence, the initial shock, convulsions, violent impact against the tub, and frantic rescue unfolded in seconds, leaving no chance for survival. Authorities mandated inspections of all resort hot tubs, and staff reported that minor malfunctions had been noted but not repaired. A moment meant for relaxation became a fatal disaster, proving how quickly ordinary amenities can turn deadly when safety is ignored. Andrea Watton, Saas-Fee, Switzerland. On July 18, 2010, 21-year-old Andrea Watton visited the alpine resort town of Saas-Fee, Switzerland, eager to experience its famous high-altitude zip line. Wearing a helmet and harness, Andrea clipped herself onto the steel cable stretched over a deep ravine. She launched, picking up speed as she soared toward the landing platform at the far end. Nearing the platform, her harness snagged on the braking system, twisting her mid-air and sending her body off axis. She collided violently with the rock face beside the platform, striking her shoulder, back, and side before tumbling into a narrow section of the ravine. Rescuers had to secure ropes and carefully descend the cliff to stabilize her, preventing further falls. The rescue took over 10 minutes, with emergency personnel navigating jagged rocks and steep slopes. Andrea was transported to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries. Investigators determined that the zip line had insufficient clearance at the landing platform and braking mechanisms had not been fully tested. The sequence, harness snag, uncontrolled spin, collision, tumbling into the ravine, and precarious rescue, illustrates how minor mechanical flaws at high speeds can have catastrophic consequences. The resort implemented safety upgrades, adding redundant brakes and stricter inspection protocols. What began as a thrill-seeking adventure ended in tragedy due to a combination of mechanical oversight and high-risk exposure. Tyler, Kerry, and Talia, Turkey. On August 5, 2024, British tourist Tyler Kerry, 32, explored his resort hotel in Antalya, Turkey. A section of the hotel was undergoing elevator maintenance, leaving one shaft partially exposed with only a temporary barrier. Tyler approached the open shaft curious and leaned over to look inside. His foot slipped on a wet tile near the edge, and he plunged several meters into the empty elevator pit. During the fall, his body struck multiple surfaces, twisting and hitting the pit walls before landing at the bottom. Guests screamed and alerted staff, who called emergency services immediately. Rescue teams arrived, but Tyler had sustained fatal trauma and was pronounced dead on the scene. Investigators cited missing safety railings and inadequate signage warning of the maintenance hazard. The accident sequence, approaching the shaft, slipping, falling several meters, impacting multiple surfaces, unfolded in seconds, but resulted in catastrophic injuries. The hotel reinforced all lift shafts, added permanent barriers, and implemented stricter staff safety protocols. What seemed like a simple misstep turned into a fatal accident in moments. Mark Tweedy, Montego Bay, Jamaica. On November 3, 2020, Mark Tweedy, 45, returned to his room at a luxury Montego Bay resort after a day at the beach. A leaking air conditioning unit had formed a puddle on the balcony tiles. Distracted, Mark stepped onto the water and slipped, falling backward. He struck his head on the balcony edge, landing in an awkward position on the tiles below. Staff heard a loud crash and ran to assist while calling emergency services. Paramedics attempted to stabilize him, but Mark had sustained fatal head trauma. Investigators found that maintenance had neglected the leaking air conditioning unit, no warning signs had been posted, and no anti-slip mats were provided. The accident unfolded in moments, stepping onto the puddle, losing balance, colliding with the balcony edge, and landing on the tiles, demonstrating how small oversights can escalate into fatal incidents. The resort repaired all affected units and implemented stricter maintenance checks. A minor, easily preventable hazard had turned a routine balcony walk into a deadly accident. Unnamed female tourist, Korlan, Thailand. On February 20, 2025, a young female tourist stayed at a Korlan resort while renovations were ongoing nearby. Faulty plumbing and an improperly installed water heater allowed toxic gas to accumulate in her bathroom. She entered the room and was overcome almost immediately. Staff noticed a strong chemical odor hours later and found her unresponsive. Emergency responders arrived, but she could not be revived. Investigators determined that unlicensed construction work combined with insufficient ventilation created a lethal environment. The accident sequence, toxic gas buildup, sudden exposure in a confined bathroom, immediate collapse, was swift and deadly. Authorities cited the resort and mandated that all renovations be inspected for proper ventilation and safety compliance. The case highlighted that even private hotel spaces could conceal hidden hazards capable of fatal consequences. The rapid onset of symptoms and complete lack of warning made the accident particularly shocking. Guests were reminded that hazards in enclosed spaces, especially during construction, can be unexpectedly lethal, emphasizing the need for strict oversight of hotel renovations and infrastructure.